Hey folks, welcome to Whiskey Politics. I'm Dave Sussman, your host and purveyor at Whiskey Politics, and thank you for joining us here. If you are a longtime viewer or just found us recently, thank you for joining us and watching our episodes. We hope that you're enjoying the content that we're providing over the last 4 years. I can't believe we're in our 4th year already here. You know, one of the things that I wanted to share with you before we get started today with our interview with Blair White was a couple of changes. And if you have been with us since 2016, you remember we had the long form interviews, and some of those would go for an hour, some would go for a couple. We had one last year that went almost 3 hours with Don Blankenship. You remember that one with Don. He's the guy that came up with Cocaine Mitch to refer to House Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. And fascinating interview. We got a lot of great feedback on that one. I definitely would check that out. But most of the episodes that we've been doing over the past year have been less than an hour. And the reason being is because, well, you know, we've had to go to commercial breaks every 12 minutes in some of these episodes. And it's something that, quite frankly, when I first started this 4 years ago, the whole idea was to have these long form interviews. There weren't a lot of people doing it at the time. A couple of the big guys, Rogan, for example, but there were very few other people doing it. And it was something that we really felt that we had an affinity towards, that we wanted to sit down and have conversations with people, true conversations, where we were getting a sense of this person's being, what he or she were thinking about, and, you know, their perception on the issues, or perspective of the issues. And so that was the goal. And of course, we've got to keep the lights on. And so you go to a commercial broadcast situation, and it was not comfortable for me. And I'll tell you why. You know, I'm over at America's Voice News Daily from 2 to 4 East Coast time. It's 11 to 1 Western time, Pacific time every day. I love the format. There's a lot of commercials, but we do 4, 6, 8, and 10-minute segments. And when we go to live breaking news, sometimes it goes longer than that. And that's great because we bring up, you know, the different clips, and we have conversation. Both my co-host and I, Amanda Head, and I, you know, we get into it. And that's perfect for that. That's perfect for that genre. What we are doing here at Whiskey Politics, and what we've been trying to do now, going into our 4th year, this is our 225th episode in our interview coming up here, is to really break away from that and get into the weeds with our guests. And it's very, very hard to do when you may notice I'm sitting here and I'm doing this with my eyes, right? And you could see me. And what it is I've got 3 big screens in front of me here. One of the screens has 3 frames within the screen. So technically, I've got like 6 screens, right? And I've got the voice in the ear and the whole thing. And no longer was it an interview, but it was now a production. And I'm thinking 1,000 different things, including the questions that I want to have with my guest. And I'm thinking about what it is that I was studying up for and preparing for the interview. And at the same time, I've got all of the production issues. And I walked away from our last interview with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Hopefully you saw that. If you haven't, check it out. Fascinating guy. You know, the son of Robert F. Kennedy, the nephew of John F. Kennedy, President of the United States. And we were talking about everything from vaccines to his relationship with Donald Trump, to his perception of what he thinks that his uncle and father would have thought of today's Democrats. And I highly recommend it. Got a lot of feedback, some negative, some positive. The negative was mostly, how dare you about the vaccines and deal with the vaccines, and he's a charlatan and all that. Anyway, check it out yourself. I think you might find it interesting. But I'm sitting there and I'm asking him a question, and he's going on and on, very interesting responses, because he's talking about science. And I'm looking at the clock. I'm doing this. And I'm like, oh God, I've got a minute and a half left. And he's just getting going with this. And I'm like, I have to interrupt. And I know, you know, on broadcast TV, if you're watching cable news or whatever it may be, that's the norm. That's not what I wanted for this. So as soon as that interview was over last week, I walked away and I said, that's it. I'm going back to basics. I'm going back to the long form interviews that both I and I think our viewers, you, prefer. And so we're going to do that starting today. we're going to another studio. I'm going to be walking out of here in just a couple of minutes by a snap of a hand, and I'm going to be sitting down with Blaire White, and we're going to have a long-form interview, no notes, no clocks, no eyes darting left and right to all the screens. I'm just going to throw out the questions as I have them in my mind and have a conversation. Let me know what you think if you prefer it that way. And that's what we're going to start doing more and more of. And the studio that we're in is a new studio that's being actually built out right now as we speak. And I'm hoping in the next few months that we're going to be there on a more regular basis. And we'll have some announcements about that in the near future. Second point before we get to the interview. And this is the second point that I just did. I'm so uncomfortable talking about these things. All right. So we're not showing commercials. All right. Commercials keep the lights on. And so with that being said, if you've been watching us for a long time or you're fairly new and you just discovered us recently and you enjoy the show, help us out if you can. If you can't help us out, don't worry about it. No guilt. Watch for free on YouTube and enjoy the show. Just like and subscribe and share with a friend. Okay. But if you can and you're comfortable, please go to paypal.me. It's PayPal. I'm sorry. Blind here. Okay. PayPal.me/mywhiskeypolitics. This is how often I ask. I don't even know my own darn website. PayPal.me/mywhiskeypolitics. PayPal.me/mywhiskeypolitics. Please, if it's a few bucks a month or whatever it is that you're comfortable with, if you're enjoying the show, it helps us keep the lights on. It helps keep us producing. This isn't our full-time job. We have to obviously earn a living. With the way that companies like YouTube and Facebook and others throttle us today because we are considered those evil, rascally conservatives, it's hard. And I'm not complaining. I enjoy doing what we do. I think you can see that I got a true passion with interviewing different people about the things that, quite frankly, I think impact our culture and our politics and our lives. So it is a joy for me to do this, but there is an expense factor. And now we're not providing commercials, and this is the only time we're going to do this before a preamble. So don't worry about this for follow-up episodes. Please help us out at paypal.me/mywhiskeypolitics. All right, pledge drive over. Folks, this is why I can't run for politics. I know that the second you win, you have to start doing this again. Anyway, I hope you truly enjoyed today's episode. I think for some people, they may take issue with it. I don't know why you would. Blaire White is a phenomenon. She's got over, I think, approaching 100 million views on YouTube. She is a I guess the right term today is transsexual. I can't even keep up. I'll ask her about that. What do I call you now? And she is absolutely 100% common sense. She has an incredible YouTube channel. I highly recommend it that you check it out. Hey, I'm a straight guy and I watch some of this stuff and I'm going to ask her about it. Why is this so compelling? And I think most of the people that watch it are also like me. She's very transparent. I'm going to ask her a lot of very personal questions. And I know she's phenomenal. She's going to answer them. She's an open book. So enjoy the episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to YouTube. Let us know what you think in the comments. Share it out there and enjoy the episode here at these new studios being built out as we speak right now. You're going to see us in a blank studio. I got some tchotchkes behind me. I was looking for something because there's just nothing there right now. But enjoy the episode. So we'll head over there right now in 3, 2, 1. And welcome back. We're in this, I don't know even what to call it here, Blair. We are in a studio that is transforming into something huge.
I see the potential.
You see the potential. Yeah. We got about 4 major bays in this new studio that's being formed here. And anyway, we've got a lot of information coming up on that in the next few episodes. But Blaire White, thank you for joining me.
Of course, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, been watching you for a while. A couple of things. over 100 million views on YouTube.
It was 99 million when I checked today.
99?
Yeah.
Can we round it up?
We're going to round up. 100 million. 100 million.
So you have, I don't know what it is. I'm a straight white guy. And what you are saying on your channel is like, I'm watching it, I'm like, why am I watching this? But what you're saying is compelling. I think what you're doing by having these conversations about issues, cultural issues, and it isn't just about cultural issues, it's also, you're like so transparent about your life. You're putting yourself out there. Have you always been this way?
Yeah, actually. I don't know. As long as I can remember, I've been an open book, and there's a few things. I was actually just talking with my fiance about this. I've always had issues with authority, so I always knew I had to be my own boss. I always knew whatever I did, I couldn't clock in and out somewhere. I couldn't have someone tell me what to do. So YouTube's perfect in that sense. I can make my own schedule, whatever. And I've always just been really open, and I've never really... There's something in some people that really care about speaking about issues that are controversial. They don't really have the confidence to really say how they feel about certain things. And I've just never had that issue, really. So it made sense to sort of take to the camera. And I mean, the moment I flipped the on switch on my first video, it changed my life forever.
How did that come around? You were... Okay, so I want to talk about trans and all this in a few moments, and I think that, there's some clarity that needs to be made for our audience on certain things, because I think there's a lot of confusion with language and things like this. But you weren't putting yourself out there for years. This is a fairly recent thing for you as far as putting yourself out there for video and for the public.
Yeah. Well, it came about because I was actually in college, and imagine being Republican-minded and being in a liberal college in California, which was my experience. And I just felt a general volatility toward people who spoke their minds on campus. I felt just instinctively almost that me saying, maybe I'm not a feminist, maybe I am a Republican, maybe I do believe in borders, like that inherently I knew was an issue to speak about publicly on campus. But again, like I said, I've never really had that fear. I mean, that some people have. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll be rejected by all the social groups on campus and in my town, but I'm going to just speak my mind on the internet. And I did, and I expected about 7 people to watch, 2 of them being family members. And I woke up and the video was posted on a bunch of different websites. And I think it had like 30,000 views just overnight, which blew my mind at the time. I was like, what is happening? And since then it's just grown and grown and grown, and I can't even believe that I'm here, to be honest.
That's an overnight success. I think there's a lot of people on YouTube that would be like, how did you do that? But it comes back to the subject matter that you're talking about and this compelling idea. And I think we're in a really weird place right now, and tell me if you think I'm wrong or what your thoughts are on this, but we're in a sociological experiment right now. Okay, I mean, there are things that people thought of as you just don't talk about, and now it's just front and center, it's out there. There are discussions on things that some people thought were, I mean, the whole idea of gay marriage, I'm old enough to remember 10 years ago when people were seriously having political debate about it. And now it's like, if you're against gay marriage, you're a homophobe and all this thing. We're moving so quickly. What do you think that is?
I don't know, honestly. I don't know what spurred all of this. I think you can point to cultural Marxism and indoctrination in schools, and growing up in California, I felt that, and I think that's changed the culture a lot. But I think it's just like the rise of Trump created this like huge culture war where suddenly things that were a little more taboo to talk about or things that were under the rug are now, like you said, front and center. And I think that I also think that, the overnight success thing, I don't know if I'd say overnight success. I think overnight, like, things started taking off for sure. Yeah. And I think it's because I found myself in a niche where there really were no trans people saying the things I was saying, like, at all. And there still isn't really. There's a few, but there really isn't, like, there's really wasn't online at the time. There wasn't any trans people saying, like, just because you're LGBT or just because you're part of a minority group doesn't mean you have to adopt a specific way of thinking, that we're all individuals. And I think that's what people really took to, and a lot of people tell me like they've never really heard someone from the trans community speak the way I do, which is crazy to me because I've met plenty of people in real life who hold my same opinions, but people willing to say them out loud, a little more rare.
All right, I want to get this straight. I was in college, not to age myself, but decades ago, and I was in psychology, and our college professor brought out transvestite, okay, to talk to us in the class. And there's transgender, there's transsexual, there's, I'm not too sure the vernacular. Okay, so today, 2020, what should people be saying when addressing somebody from the trans community?
Well, maybe this will make you feel better.
Okay.
I can't keep up either. There is just so many, I mean, what used to be LGBT, which I feel like is a pretty all-encompassing label. Like, I think that's good. Now it's LGBTQIIA+. I think there's like a 2 in there too, like literally a number.
What's the number?
Don't know. I don't really care to know, to be honest, because I feel like LGBT is all-encompassing and that covers everyone. Okay. But regardless, everyone but straight people, obviously. Yeah, I know that transvestite is now a word that's deemed as crossdresser, and I know that transgender and transsexual are a little more interchangeable.
Yeah.
I just say trans for short, and to me, it's interesting because, you know, online there's this discourse of what's the right term and how do we talk about this. But it's funny because in real life, it's highly irrelevant to my life. Like, I live a very normal life, and being trans, like, doesn't ever come up ever.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it did during my transition, obviously, as to be expected, but in my day-to-day interactions, like, it's so irrelevant, which is the interesting, like, paradigm of my career in which I do talk about this stuff online, but in real life, just live and let live. That's what I say.
Well, I'm the same way, and I've always felt that way, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show. We have a lot of conservatives that watch this show.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that would be somewhat, I wouldn't say the word uncomfortable, but they would be curious, and at the same time they're not too sure and confused. It's exactly what it is. And I think the reason is, and it goes back to something that you were saying, and that is that it seems to me that the left has hijacked the LGBT community, and they're using it as a political cudgel.
Yep. To
silence speech, to tell people the words that they must say, and so a lot of people on the right are somewhat uncomfortable, not just with maybe they're religious or whatever that issue is, put that to the side, but also the cultural, political aspects of this.
Absolutely. I've often said that, like, LGBT people and trans people are like the football in the political football game. It's like just being passed back and forth, and I don't feel like at times either side gets it right. I feel like the left absolutely co-opts trans people. The left absolutely weaponizes the existence of trans people to fight for things that trans people don't even want. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't. Like, I'm here to tell you now, like, trans people never asked for gender-neutral bathrooms. White, straight liberals ask for gender-neutral bathrooms. Trans people have been going to the bathroom since the beginning of time with no issues. And the general society has never had any issues. Now all of a sudden it's this huge debate. Because again, it's like the football being passed back and forth. You have white, straight liberals who have no actual understanding of the trans experience, seeing that we want all these things. We want little kids on hormones. We want gender-neutral bathrooms. We want trans women in women's sports. I know I'm going all over the place, but these are all the things that the general society seems as going too far, and I personally see it's going too far. So you have them doing that on our behalf, which we didn't ask for, and then you have the right fighting back, justifiably so, and it just becomes this war that's going past us, and we're sitting here like, you're wrong, and I'm just chilling. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get across, if that makes sense.
You threw a lot of issues out. I want to get into some of these issues with you, but what is the response from the trans community or the LGBT community to somebody like you saying these things? Because it's kind of going against their grain.
Oh, absolutely. But you know what? You'd expect that. But I have had so many people, both just like regular supporters on the street that I meet, or even LGBT celebrities who would never say it publicly, who absolutely agree with me, who absolutely disagree with sort of the more extremes and things that go too far, but they'll never voice it, which is frustrating for me because then it paints me as having this extreme, you know, set of ideas that 8-year-olds shouldn't be transitioning, that 11-year-olds shouldn't be going on hormones. To an LGBT person that's only paying attention to mainstream LGBT sort of discourse, that sounds extreme for a trans person to say that. For all the rational LGBT people in the back who would never say it publicly, that's exactly what they believe. But when less people are willing to say it, it becomes a more fringe idea, even if more people agree with it, if that makes sense. People just need to be brave and speak their mind.
You go back to, you mentioned this a few minutes ago, you know, you were back in college and you kind of already had this disposition of what is considered conservative ideas. I think of it more as common sense ideas, okay, border security and things like this. But where did that come from? Is that childhood, upbringing? What is it?
I grew up with a very liberal mother who we constantly have debates, which is fine, and a very conservative father. So I feel like I landed like right dab in the middle as a teenager to where I saw both sides. And then I started going even a little more right when I entered college, and I started developing more of a sense of personal responsibility. Suddenly I wasn't living on my parents' dime. Suddenly I was thinking about my future and about taxes that I want lower and about just taking my life into my own hands, which is actually very congruent with being trans. I had to work very hard to get where I am in my transition. I had to take personal responsibility, fiscal responsibility. I had to save a lot of money, right? And I had to make what I wanted happen for me and not rely on someone else, the government. There's a lot of people who do get, you know, government paid for surgeries and stuff, but you know, it was just getting older. There's that quote that goes around like, if you're not liberal when you're 18, then you're a monster. What's the quote? It's like,
it's if you're not liberal under 30, you don't have a heart, and if you're not conservative over 40, you don't have a brain.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. And that's a little more, I guess I got to a 40 mindset at like 21.
Yeah.
But regardless, like things just started making more sense to me. And I also, I started watching certain commentators online that maybe people in my town made the mistake of talking to me about how much they hate them, which made me curious. So I was like, let me listen to what they have to say. Suddenly I'm realizing all these commentators are making a lot of sense, and I'm agreeing and disagreeing here and there.
Do you remember some of the commentators you watched?
Yeah, I used to watch Ann Coulter videos. She's very controversial, but I used to watch Ann Coulter videos like crazy.
Wow.
And then not even just like completely right-wing commentators. There was like people just giving alternative ideas about feminism, like Karen Strawn. She was out there. I think she's amazing.
Karen's been on our show a few times. Ann's been on our show a couple of times.
They were instrumental in me sort of joining YouTube, to be honest. I was watching those kind of videos and I was like, let me throw my hat in the ring. And it worked out, but yeah.
Wow. So your mother was liberal, your father was conservative, and from what I understand, and tell me if I'm wrong here as far as the chronology, you were just coming out and your dad got sick? Your dad got ill?
Yeah, I was considering coming out, and then he got cancer and died like 3 weeks later. It was very sudden.
3 weeks from diagnosis?
Yeah, it spread extremely fast, and he's one of those people that didn't go to the doctor. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people have a certain pride or an I'm okay thing about feeling ill, and then sometimes, you know, you really need to go to the doctor. So that happened, and then
How old were you?
I was, I think, 19. I was 19 when that happened.
You were young.
Yeah. And so because of that, I kind of held off on coming out so I could take care of my mom. The last thing after someone's husband dies you want to hear is, by the way, I'm transitioning. It's like, you know,
yeah, that's a lot.
Even the most accepting person.
But did you said it in some of your videos that you felt like a girl when you were a little boy.
Yeah.
So your dad knew, kind of, sort of, right? I mean,
they knew something was different. Everyone knew something was different. And I never came out as gay or bi or any of the sort of stepping stones people tend to come out as first. I was always just me. I was always very eccentric. I was a 14-year-old with like purple hair and like weird fat, which is so funny now because that's the kind of person who really hates me now. It's very ironic how things end up.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Like, you think of the stereotypical person who really hates Blair White now, and it's like the purple-haired SJW. It's like,
oh, okay,
so it's like,
okay,
I
yeah.
used to look like them.
You see them in the women's parades or you know, the marches.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I believe take back fun colored hair, people. Like, it shouldn't only be crazy people having colored hair. But yeah, like that happened, and then I sort of put off coming out, and then I moved to Michigan for an ex-boyfriend. That relationship fell apart.
Okay.
And I kind of realized I need to move back to California and just get this over with. I always saw it as just something I had to get over with.
Yeah.
A lot of people make it like their entire identity, and they get really consumed with the struggle of it. And mine was just like, okay, this isn't going away. It's been there since I was 5. I'm just going to get it over with. And that's what I did. Just like, okay, let me transition and just move on. And start done.
It's a pretty big friggin' decision to make. I mean,
yeah, but when you consider, and it's not something that I feel like if you're not trans, it's hard to sort of understand.
Folks, so tell the folks, because you're an open book here.
Yeah.
Surgeries, you've had surgeries, you haven't, that people are wondering about.
Okay. Damn, I did say open book, didn't I? Okay, yeah. So I have actually chronicled on my YouTube my entire transition. Because the fun thing is I actually started taking hormones like 2 months before I started. So what people saw in that first video was like very beginning of Blair. So I chronicled that I've been on hormones for years. I've had some facial work done, and I've had my breasts done. And as far as finishing everything else, that will be happening in 2020. So
you've made the decision to move forward to actually take care of everything else.
Yeah, I just want to, like I said before, the mindset of getting it over with.
Wow.
Just get it over with, yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay. It sounds to me like you've been back and forth on that, right? I mean, that's a major
The reason I've been back and forth on it is not because I don't want it, but because sometimes I feel as if the science isn't necessarily all the way there, and it's very hard to find a surgeon who's excellent at it.
Okay.
Basically. But I've found a surgeon who I believe is excellent at it. And there's been, even just as of recent, like pretty good scientific breakthroughs with it.
Okay.
And I'm feeling pretty confident. So
how does your fiance Joey feel about this?
Oh, he's down. He is the most supportive person I've ever met in my life. Any video I do, he believes in. Every career move I make, he believes in. Every I mean, when I had the surgery that I have had, he was there taking care of me and wrapping my bandages and so very supportive.
I get a sense, and I just for folks watching, Blair and I met with Joey a couple of weeks ago on a episode of Middle Ground, which is what is that? Jubilee Media, and they got like 5 million subscribers, and it's going to be coming out, I guess, in the end of February.
That's what they told me.
Yeah. So we were on this panel. We were the misogynists. We were the we were the anti-Me Too, but we'll explain that. And I met, and I get a sense from Joey that he's like a typical straight guy, and I'm just like, I'm trying to do the math, and you guys were very open with me about all of this. I get a sense that there is a really genuine love and a level of intimacy there. And in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, that's where Joey comes from. You know, he's in love with you. You have to be in love with somebody, and I guess everything else is just, I don't know. What is it? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so I met Joey. He was actually a subscriber, which I think,
really?
Yeah, people advise against, getting with what we call fans or whatever. I prefer the term supporter or subscriber, but so he knew who I was. His whole family knew who I was because of the politics thing, and he comes from a very conservative family out in Virginia, and they all liked me, and he liked me, and then we met in person, and it was weird. It was like just kind of instantly like, okay, you're like my person now. It was like, then we're just together, and we've been together almost 3 years. We're engaged now.
Yeah.
And
he's not gay. He wasn't in relationships with men.
He's only ever been with women. And it just worked. He just loves me for me, and it's not even like, sometimes when you hear, oh, he loves me for me, that means, oh, so he's ignoring what he doesn't like about you. No, like, he loves everything about me, and he supports my career. He believes in like the change I'm making online and people, and it just is what it is. I guess like people tend to question things like that a lot. People tend to question, like, even like you said, like, what's the right terminology? It's like, that all makes sense when it comes to like online discourse. You're trying to fit everything in boxes and do all this, but when it comes to real life, it's like, we're probably the most normal, boring couple on the planet. Like,
you're boring. You hang out.
Yeah, like, it's not. There's no weird. Like, I know like regular couples that are like a little weirder than we are.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird out there.
Yeah.
I find that dynamic fascinating, and I appreciate you being so open about it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, watching your episodes, you guys have been completely transparent about it. And I think, again, that's one of the reasons that it's so compelling for people like myself that normally wouldn't be, I don't watch Bravo or anything, right? So it's like, what? And I think it's the changing dynamic and the idea that you can be in love with somebody, a human being, right? And so, the cultural expectations must be really, really heavy. What is Joey's family's response, his friends' response?
Basically, his family's response was, as long as you're not bringing home a liberal. That was like their family.
That was their priority.
They were like, yeah, like, wow. I mean, maybe not in that specific wording, but Joey always said that. He's like, yeah, she's not liberal, so it's fine. So it was more of like they had respect for me prior because they had seen my work in the political space for a minute, and Joey had talked about me to them beforehand. So they came into it having that base level of respect. And, you know, on a real note, maybe a trans person isn't the ideal person they had in their mind for their son. Like, I'm sure it wasn't. But when I got there, I've been there every Christmas since we've been together, every Christmas. So his family is my family now. And, like, again, being trans doesn't come up. And if it does, it doesn't even matter. And they completely accept me. And they're also very conservative people. Like, we go and, like, we're shooting, like, AR-15s off their porch, and we're, like, going to, like, the Trump Hotel, and, like, we're doing a lot of conservative stuff because that's who they are.
You guys are AR-15, Trump hat-wearing conservatives. And, I mean, you're breaking the mold here. And this is, again, why I find this whole thing so fascinating. The reason it's fascinating is because, okay, take a step back and we take a look at the LGBT community. And there is, again, this idea that it has been, I guess it's been controlled by the left in many ways. And there's certain language that you can't say, there's certain words that you can't say. And you know, you could be canceled if you said something 10 years ago that's now considered verboten, right? So talk to me about, is there another, and I think there's a couple I know of, but are there other folks out there like you in the trans community? We've had Brandon Struck on the show, we've had Ricky Rebel on the show, you know, so from the gay community, right, but from the trans community, who else is out there like with this perspective?
Right, well, it's important to remember that, you know, even the gay community is small. It's like a very small fraction of the population. And then you go to the trans community, that's even smaller. It's like 0.01%. There's not a ton of trans people, so you're not going to see a ton of outspoken trans people in terms of, like, I'm a Republican. They're out there, though. I will tell you, my comment section is full of them. There is a misconception that being trans or being gay or being LGBT or whatever, that is inherently, like, a political stance. When in reality, like, there's nothing political about me feeling like a girl when I was 5. There's nothing political about Brandon Strock realizing he's gay when he's a kid. I don't know when he came out or not, but you know what I mean? It's like these are things that are just kind of intrinsic in there beforehand. And you may fall into the politicization of it, and you may be sort of, for lack of a better term, you know, brainwashed or tricked into thinking that the left is your savior because you are that. But that's not really the truth. There's also so much more to care about. Like, people often ask me, like, so how can you be trans and a Republican? And I'm like, okay, so you're asking that, and it's a valid question, but you're asking me it sort of like with the assumption that A, I only care about trans issues, that B, I don't care about anything else. Like, what does being trans have to do with my views on, like, national security, on immigration, on what I think about fiscal responsibility in the economy? And, like, there's just so much more. Like, on the long list of issues that I would vote for, trans is a drop in the bucket. It's like, I want to pay for whoever's, like, lowering my taxes. I'm a young entrepreneur. That's what I care about. The rest of it, I would rather fight this fight of carving out a space within Republican discourse and the Republican Party to let them know, like, you have LGBT supporters, and going forward in the future, you're probably going to have to just accept that. And you don't have to love it, but just accept it. I'd rather fight that fight than all of a sudden now I'm, like, a socialist voting for Bernie Sanders because I'm trans. Where's the logic in that? So
is there a lack of education? And I'm not just going to say in the gay community or trans community. I think it's across the board, every community today. So that the social issue takes prominence. That social issues are used as fear to dominate your thought of who is the best politician, and the economics and the tax issues and the national security issues are kind of put to the wayside.
Oh, absolutely. What happens is, I mean, this is just, people can hate me for saying this, but the left runs on emotion, and there's nothing more emotional than social issues. There's nothing really emotional on about tax cuts or about, like, I mean, I guess with the border, there's a lot of emotions there too, but that's on the left. It's very emotion ran. It's very easy to manipulate. It's very easy to manipulate people into voting for you based on emotion. And what happens is there's a caricature of the right that they are emotionless, right? So, and that they don't care at all about social issues, which isn't actually true. It's just they tend to care about different social issues. And even as far as the LGBT thing, I mean, you were saying earlier, like gay marriage used to be such a hot button issue. I'm old enough to remember that time as well. I grew up.
Obama said he was against it.
Absolutely. Trump is the first president to come into office supporting it. That's one thing. And the other thing is that now you can't even find two people in a room to really debate that. Like, no one cares.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
People just accepted, like, yeah, some people are gay, it's fine. And that's all that needs to really, it is what it is. So I think it's just emotional manipulation.
But you're very protective over the perception of the trans community. And what I mean by that is this, is that you will call out others in the trans community that you think are Jessica Yaniv.
Yeah.
Okay, she's kind of nuts, right? I think this woman, or whatever she is, I don't know.
He's nuts.
He's nuts. So why would you call him he, but she wants to be received as a she?
Because I have sort of every reason to believe it's not really a trans woman, and it's really a fetishist trying to prey on young girls and claiming to be trans, a fetishist.
Okay.
Yeah. What I tend to call out is, I actually don't really call out people within the trans community very often.
Yeah.
It's actually people that I believe are superimposing themselves within the community to do harm on others.
Yeah.
So there is what some people call a slippery slope fallacy. I call it, unfortunately, the reality.
Yeah.
There are some very rare but specific cases of people doing it, and I feel it's my duty to, if there's a Jessica Yaniv, which for people that don't know, it's a Canadian trans woman, aka a man who's made no surgical or hormonal changes to their body and wants to go in women's bathrooms, has been caught taking pictures of young girls, has been caught messaging young girls inappropriate things. That's a predator, right? So
didn't she invite children to a topless birthday or a pool party and said that no guardians or parents would be allowed?
Yeah, it's totally disgusting, totally reprehensible.
Yeah.
But what I found was when it first started making headlines, right, I'm seeing conservative commentator after conservative commentator and only people on the right calling it out. And I'm like, that doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah.
It should not be a Republican issue to call out predators. It should not be a right-wing idea that this person is a pedophile or calling out pedophilia. You know what I mean? So I felt like, you know what? There are trans people with bigger platforms than me. There are people on TV every day. But I have a relatively large one, and I felt like if I'm going to use it, why not call out a predator and kill two birds with one stone, proving that we don't stand for that. Mm-hmm. We may have our differences in between. Yeah, you're a leftist. Yeah, you're a socialist. Yeah, I'm a capitalist. Yeah, I'm a Republican. But what I think we can agree on is screw that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I felt like that was important. And that was a turning point for my channel as well. Yeah.
So you called her out on your channel. You had a show. I think she came on. I saw one episode where she called in on Skype and you argued with her for a time, and it's still up there. I'm sure you got how many hits on that thing?
It has like 2 million. Yeah.
2 million hits. That's amazing. So this woman she seems to be certifiable. She seems to be crazy. I think she just got arrested from that. Yep. She went after a Daily Caller reporter or something. What was that?
The first arrest was actually because in Canada, it's illegal to own a taser. Okay. And in my live stream, Jessica was waving a taser around, trying to threaten me through the internet, I guess. I don't know. And the cops actually, the moment the live stream ended, went into the house and arrested Jessica. And the second arrest was actually yesterday, which was a reporter outside of the courthouse for the taser charge hearing.
Really?
Jessica started punching the reporter and now got arrested for assault.
So she's in jail now?
I think she's out now, like on bond or whatever, but faces up to 5 years in prison for assaulting the person.
Wow.
So, I don't feel like I have to answer to every bad apple in the community or whatever, but I also feel like if I choose to either let this stereotype that trans people are predators exist or stand against it, I'm going to stand against it. Because I don't want to live in a world where people perceive me as even remotely similar to Jessica Yaniv. We have literally nothing in common. You know what I mean? So it was just...
Well, you're protecting yourself, and again, this is the whole purpose of having you, a complete open book today, which I completely appreciate. But the idea is that you're going to have good players and bad players in every demographic, right? What I like about what you've done is that you've been so outspoken about some of those bad players while standing up for what I consider common sense. Some people will call it conservative. I think it's just common sense. You talk about low taxes, you talk about national security, you talk about all the things. Let me ask you from your perspective, Donald Trump's when he first came into office a couple of years ago, there was the trans ban in the military. And a lot of us were like, why? What are you doing? What was your reaction to this?
My initial reaction was also, why, what are you doing? And then I had to humble myself and say, okay, I am a, for lack of a better term, privileged, comfortable trans woman living in Los Angeles. I don't know shit about, I don't know anything about the way the military operates, what is best for that. I also know that if you so much as like stub your toe, suddenly you're not eligible to serve in the military and fight on the front line specifically. So if the military decides we would rather not have people on hormone replacement therapy fighting on the front lines, and we would not have a demographic that already has like a 50% suicide rate, joining it and compounding upon the fact that veterans have a huge suicide rate as well. Who am I from my like cushy apartment in LA, like to like, I don't know, like mid brushing my hair say, oh, that's so wrong. It's like, I don't really know how the military operates. As far as the trans military man, as far as Trump goes, I believe he was doing what he was advised to do by the military, and I would be mad as someone who voted for him if he ignored that, right? Like, that's kind of how I felt. Yeah.
There's also the fiscal aspect of it as well, right? Because I think surgeries have to be paid for by the military if you're a member of the, how does that work?
I think that was a little bit more like negligible. Like, I don't think that was as big of an issue as people made it out to be, but I think it still is worth commenting on. The biggest thing for me was like, you know, if you can't be on like anxiety medication, why can you be on hormone replacement therapy and fight in the front lines? Like, it makes sense when you actually think about it. But if you're only running on emotion and you're only running on this is an attack on trans people, then you're going to see it as that. But you know what I mean?
Well, folks, you can see why she's got 100 million views. I mean, you're going completely against the grain of the LGBT community. You're outspoken, you're up there, and again, what I like to call common sense. Do you think this kind of perspective has held back opportunities from you?
Yes and no. I mean, I would never, ever dare be ungrateful for what I do have as a result of my choice to start a channel and do everything I do online. Like, I'm a contributor to the Post Millennial. I have made really good money doing what I'm doing. I met my fiance through what I'm doing. I get to reach and communicate with people for a living. I get to talk for a living. That's such a privilege, and that's so amazing. Of course, there are certain things, like I've been booked for different little, you know, TV shows or little like liberal events where they love the fact that I'm a trans woman online, and then look a little deeper and then see the word Republican and then I'm out. That happens all the time. But you know, that's just what it is. If you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. And I'm just willing to speak my mind. That's what I started on, and so I'm never going to censor myself for the sake of more opportunities. And believe me, I could. If I made a video right now that said, actually I'm a liberal, actually screw all of this, I guarantee you I would probably have some kind of big opportunity coming right after that. I guarantee you, because I've had people and casting people and everything tell me like, it was the Republican thing, sorry. That's a normal thing, but I'm never gonna compromise who I am just for that, so.
Your father passed away when you were 19?
Yeah.
He was a conservative. He didn't see you transition.
Yeah.
What would he think of you right now talking like this?
Oh my God. I don't even know. I think he'd be a little mind blown. There was a moment in November I actually did a live show, because I do speaking events as well, and I did a live show in my hometown of Chico, California, and it was a really big venue. It was sold out with 200 people waiting outside to get in. Protesters as well, but a lot of love as well. And I think if he would have saw that, he'd be really shocked, especially considering just who I am, what I look like on the stage, and then the reason I'm on the stage. But overall, I think he'd be happy. I don't think he would be upset about what I, in the beginning, probably yes, if I'm being honest. But seeing what I've done with my life and that I'm a self-sustaining adult and everything else just kind of fades to the background, I think he'd be cool with it.
I think you'd be really proud.
Yeah.
If he's a conservative, as you said he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a little shocking. You know, I've got a couple of sons, and you know, but parents love their kids.
Yeah.
And what you're doing right now is you're changing the culture, and this is the reason we wanted to have you on. This isn't a political discussion. This is a cultural discussion.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening right now across this culture, all Western Europe, around the world, is that people are starting to change their mindset. They're not so fixated anymore. And I think it's people like you that are leading that conversation. I want to throw another political issue into this.
Let's do it.
You mentioned it earlier, real briefly. trans bathrooms, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything that I've read, there's not men going into a Target bathroom and taking advantage of little girls or whatever it is. But talk to me about that issue, what your feelings were on the law.
I don't have the law written in front of me, but I can give sort of my general opinion on trans bathrooms in general, which was, like I said earlier, no trans people ever asked for a gender neutral bathroom, so we'll get that out of the way. And then in terms of like trans people using the bathroom that they choose to use, I think it depends on have you transitioned or have you not. I think it really is that simple. It wouldn't make any sense for me to go in a men's restroom looking the way I look. It wouldn't, in terms of like if you want to minimize a commotion.
And I don't think anybody would question you going into a woman's restroom.
It's never happened in my life. No, even very early.
Nobody would know.
No. So it's about doing what makes sense, which is what's been happening for the longest time. But now there's this like war on what makes sense and what doesn't. When bathrooms are just utilitarian spaces, you go in for a specific purpose. Rapes statistically do not happen in bathrooms like that. I think it's just do what makes sense. If you transitioned and if you look at least somewhat like the gender, like no one's gonna have an issue with it. I actually think it's caused more problems than not. I've seen news stories of like manly looking biological women, so just regular women, getting like questioned at the bathroom. So it's caused things that never used to be an issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I completely also, I was talking about this with my friend the other day. I completely understand the fear that many conservatives that maybe are living in the middle of the country have about it, because this is an issue that some of them have never even heard about before like 2016. Never even heard about. Never met a trans person that they know of in their lives, and they're being asked to weigh in on topics that don't even have that much relevance to them. Of course they're gonna just react with like, oh no, I don't want that. Because it's new to them. They don't realize that it's been happening forever. You know what I mean? So I'm completely sympathetic to people who don't understand. What I'm not sympathetic towards is the left weaponizing trans people, as I said, and fighting for stuff that we didn't ask for. We didn't want this complication. Like, trans people want to just exist and be left alone for the most part. Like, there are the attention seekers online and people who maybe I don't believe are trans who co-opt the title and whatever, but in general, like real trans people just want to mind their own business and get on.
Just leave me alone.
Yeah, don't tread on me.
Yeah, don't tread on me.
Period.
Gadsden flag.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's so many different issues that have come out and have been politicized. For example, hormone therapy for kids.
Yeah.
There's a group out there that want to give kids as young as 7, 8, 9 years old hormone therapy. Are children at 7, 8, 9 years old enough to determine if they may feel a certain way? You felt a certain way.
Right.
But do you think we've got some parents, we see it here in Southern California, in New York, and other liberal enclaves, that if a little boy says, I feel like a girl, they're immediately changing their name and buying them dresses.
Right. I think two things can be true at once. We don't live in a black and white world. Some people know very young. I wouldn't say I knew very young, I'd say I felt different very young, and as I got older, I learned the language and I kind of narrowed it down. Some people know very young, a lot of people don't. And what you're seeing is a huge rise in detransitioners. If you look up on YouTube, actually my last video is actually on this.
Yep. To explain detransitioning.
Detransitioning is basically when you transition, whether it be medically or surgically, and then you realize it's not for you, you made a mistake and you go back, which is probably so traumatizing, I couldn't even imagine. But there's a rise in teenagers detransitioning because maybe they went on hormones at 13 and then by 16 they're like, wait, I don't know. Because that's what the teenage mind is. There isn't a fully formed understanding of the concept of permanence, right? Like you can't plan the rest of your life when you're 15 because you don't have any concept of it, because your brain is not formed to have that concept. So I think it's incredibly dangerous, this idea, just opening the floodgates. As actually one of the most popular, the name escapes me right now, one of the most popular gender clinics in Britain had 77 patients in 2010 of kids transitioning. What age? So we're talking around like 11 to 13. And 11 to under 18. So 77 though. Guess how many they have now? They have 2,500 with a waiting list of 3,000.
Of kids from 11 years old?
It has been an over 3,000% increase in children identifying as transgender. And does anyone really want to say that every single one of those kids really knows for sure? And does anyone really want to say that there's not a certain percentage, I would venture to say a large percentage of those kids, who have fallen into something that they either saw glamorized or popularized online that is not really them. And we also have this issue of the overdiagnosing of kids. You have kids thrown on medicine, especially young boys. That's something I'm really impassionate about. Young boys are often diagnosed with ADHD and OCD and different things when they're really just being boys in school, when they're going through things at home. The point is, kids are being overdiagnosed, and a certain portion of them are being overdiagnosed as transgender and then making permanent bodily changes because of it. And it's very frightening for me. It's scary to see it.
Okay, so this opens up about 30 other questions. Oh my God. As a father, I mean, this is insanity to me.
It is.
So, okay, let's step back a little bit here. You're saying in a period of 10 years, you've basically gone 3,000%. You've got 2,500 children, literally children, that are barely even prepubescent at this point, that are deciding to change their gender. What does this do to? Is this parents? Is this culture? Is it online? I mean, I know that you can't pinpoint just one thing, but talk about our society and how this has led to this.
What many people don't know is that the definition of trans has changed. The definition of trans used to be, and maybe for the older people that are watching, maybe just think back, like maybe you didn't know exactly what being trans was, but I think you had just an understanding just through going through life, and you're old enough to remember, like, there used to be a time where like people, they didn't maybe understand it, maybe didn't like it, but they had the idea that like, yeah, some people will become women when they're men, and some people, it's like, that was a general, like, yeah, that exists out in the world. Now, the definition of transsexual, which used to just be born male, identifies as female, pretty simple to be honest, and vice versa. Now it is, according to many people and activists in the culture, it is defined as people who don't fit traditional gender roles. And I'm thinking, that's almost everyone. No one falls perfectly into a traditional gender role. Some people do. Most people don't. Like, there are women who are CEOs in, like, that's not a traditional gender role, so are they transgender? No. There are, men who are maybe a little more feminine, just regular flamboyant gay guys. Does that mean they're transgender because they're not perfectly masculine in every way? No. But that's the definition now. So what happens is more and more people are finding themselves within that umbrella and that definition. And a lot of those people are kids. A lot of those people are kids growing up in a social media age in which they're trying to find themselves through other people, through influencers, through content online. And that's what actually always, I try to really put it out there as much as I can, not just because it was the right choice for me, because my fans are young. Unlike most...
What's the average age, would you say?
Teenagers and young adults.
Really?
13 to 25. And some older, but mostly kids, which is very different than most Republican comments.
Well, but that's a good thing because you're providing a counterbalance.
Yes, absolutely. I would say that's a positive thing.
Yeah.
I try to put it out there that just because it was the right choice for me, which I made as an adult at 20, doesn't mean it's the right choice for you. And I never want to glamorize. Like, sometimes I'm like, should I be showing like this new purse I bought and it being glamorized? It's like, but then I'm gonna have to be true to myself, and I'm not walking around depressed. Like, I'm happy with my choices. But it's sad. There are a lot of trans people, a lot of kids, falling into this. And it's sad because, like I said, what used to be 77 people in a clinic is now 5,000 people. That doesn't make sense. There could maybe be, I would expect maybe a bit of a rise as maybe acceptance rises and people know about it more.
Yeah.
But thousands more people, you're going to see more and more detransitioners. And I've been saying it for years, and it's starting to happen now. Even just in the past few months, there's been a lot of...
What is the effect of detransitioning? Obviously, there's the biological impact. That's just got to be brutal. I couldn't imagine it. But psychological?
Yeah, I mean, so transitioning, as maybe people would guess, you don't really know until you go through it, but maybe people would guess, is like, it's very rigorous. Like, there's a lot to it. Like, even just hormone replacement therapy, like, a lot changes in your mind and your emotions and how you feel about things, and it changes your body physically as well, not just mentally and emotionally. I actually interviewed a 19-year-old girl on my channel in my last video, and she transitioned at 15. She went on to testosterone to become a man. By the time she was 19, she realized it was a mistake, and now she has permanently a very deep voice. It sounds 100% male, and she can't fix it without some sort of extreme surgery. And she was one of these people that we're talking about, a 15-year-old.
So would you suggest that I mean, the age of adult is 18, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that we should wait to allow kids wait until they're 18? I'm sorry, high school's going to be brutal for you, but until you're an adult?
I would say at a minimum 18. I would say, like, that makes sense to me. And obviously it's like, it's nuanced. It's like, 16's an adult here and 18's an adult here. I get that.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, you just don't have the concept of permanence as a kid to make choices that permanently change your life. I mean, just specifically the girl I interviewed, like, she has facial hair now and a very deep voice because she wanted testosterone, but now she's like, no, I'm actually a woman.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine going through that. So also, a whole other topic is like the bar of entry to transition is almost gone now. It used to be you had to get letters from therapists and recommendations, and now you just walk in anywhere, pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where does this end?
It ends with, in my perfect world, more LGBT people standing up against the excesses, because it's like, it sucks because it's like there's a line. It's like you can accept people for who they are, for being gay or trans or anything in between, without accepting the excesses, without accepting just this huge cultural shift of now kids are on hormones, and now biological men are breaking women's skulls in fighting competitions, and now, you know, and now pronouns, or you get fined or thrown in jail. It's like there's a line, and we have to identify the line to where you're impeding on other people's rights while asserting your own, and not cross that one. I feel the same way about, like, you know, I grew up in a time where, you know, on the left they were waging a war against like hyper-religious people imposing their religion and beliefs on people. Yeah. And I felt very much in line with that, because I felt like, yeah, you shouldn't dictate to me what I do because of your belief system and your religion. And now the LGBT community is in many ways becoming a religion. It's becoming a, we feel this way and you have to as well, and you have to abide, otherwise you're canceled, you're a bigot, we're calling your business where you work, and we're finding you. And that is wrong.
Conflate that with the politics of today, because we're seeing that primarily from the left. And, you know, we've got classic liberals that watch this show, Democrats that watch this show. I would say probably a majority of our viewers are more conservative leaning. But that is really kind of what we're seeing coming from Hollywood. You know, if you made a tweet 10 years ago, you're canceled, you can't do the Oscars or whatever it may be. So where does that end with everything that you're talking about here? Because it seems like it's just continuing to build up to this oppressive, cult-like, you know, circle of, you know, you're either with us or you're the devil.
I think it's gonna change, and maybe I'm being optimistic, but I feel with 2020 starting with the Ricky Gervais thing at the Golden Globe.
Yeah, he was great.
I feel that just seeing the uptick in people being interested in commentators like myself online, you know, entrepreneurs that are speaking right-wing politics are thriving right now, and they weren't before. Yeah. It means people are wanting to listen, at least a certain segment of people. And if that segment of people gets large enough, and people are willing to speak up, because that's the other thing I get frustrated with. Whenever I do speaking events, I feel like almost every question is, how do I say how I feel like you do? How do I get the bravery to state my opinions? And I'm like, you just have to do it. Nothing's gonna change unless you speak up and you take the hit. I'm sorry, you have to take the hit. I wish there was an easier answer, and trust me, I don't take for granted that I'm my own boss, that I can't be fired because of my opinions, that I can't, you know, I guess YouTube could, let's not even speak that over my life, but, you know, you just have to be willing to speak up, because the more people that speak up, the less taboo and the less fringe certain ideas are, because only a small number of people are willing to say it. Yeah.
You're so open, you're so transparent. I want to talk to you and get your perspective on something that, as I referred to earlier in the discussion, you and I met a couple of weeks ago. We were on a panel over at Jubilee Media's The Middle Ground. It was, there was three of us, and then there was three other people that we were just kind of pit against each other, I guess. And we were having a discussion about the ramifications of Me Too. And we were kind of positioned as the against Me Too. And I think you and I both, and we said this, we're not against Me Too. We don't want anybody in a powerful position to take advantage of an employee or anything like that. And those people should be held accountable. So we're not a couple of misogynists
it's just
here.
The excesses.
Absolutely. We haven't seen the episode. We don't know how they're going to cut it yet. It was 2 hours, and they're probably going to reduce it down to 30 minutes. But give me your perspective on everything that we talked about that day, and the whole idea of Me Too right now and how it's impacting our culture.
Yeah, you know, the debate itself was very, like, it's very binary in the sense that, like, are you pro or anti, right? And we are the antis, which obviously I knew that going into it. I'm always the anti whenever I'm casted for something like that. But, you know, I think we just spoke mostly against the excesses of it. We spoke against, hey, there's, you know, there's levels to sexual assault. There's levels for reasons people should be canceled. People shouldn't be canceled for someone rescinding their consent later on. People shouldn't the Me Too movement has done some good, and there's been people that have been held responsible that really needed it. Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein. I don't think anyone disagrees that they're scumbags and should face consequences. But, you know, there's people like Louis C.K. who lost basically his entire career because he consensually was kind of creepy with certain women just for being creepy.
Yeah.
Just for being creepy. People have a right to be creepy.
He was pleasuring himself in front of women? Is that what it was?
He was consensually masturbating in front of women, consensually. But was still somehow canceled.
Yeah.
You have people like Aziz Ansari who, at the height of his career, got hit with a hashtag Me Too because of a girl that consented during it, but then took back the consent. So it's just about...
She changed her mind the next day.
Yes. So it's just about you know, we're not anti-Me Too, we're anti the excesses of Me Too. And that's the unfortunate reality about a lot of different social movements is they start out with a core, very positive idea, like anti-rape. That's everyone.
Yeah.
But then you have, you know, the rest of it, and it gets to be too much.
Yeah. Our position was that it was actually impacting the advancement of women. It was hurting women, and that there was a lot of studies that are coming out. Harvard Business Review, for example, I threw that one out there, and I got screamed at by the other side on this. It's Harvard Business Review. Yeah, the bastion is conservative, you know, stats. But it's showing that more and more men, 40, 50, 60% in the workplace, are no longer positioning themselves in a place where they could be alone with a woman in a workplace environment, an office, an airplane, a hotel, a business trip, or anything like this. And that is in fact, what was it? Sandberg from Facebook. What's her name? Something Sandberg, I'm sorry, from Facebook, and she's one of the leaders of Facebook right now, and she's saying that men are not hiring women because of this. They're scared to death that they are, after what we saw with Kavanaugh and the whole lack of due process situation, that they're going to be falsely accused. And now you've got to prove your innocence, but you're guilty until done, you know.
But do you see how, I know you see, but to people watching, I hope you can see how these social movements really do spiral out of control. It's the same thing we're talking about with trans activists and the trans community. It's like, it starts out with a good idea. Accept people who are different. Wonderful. And then it becomes this other militant stuff that really imposes on people and actually hurts the original group they were trying to help. It's the same thing with the Me Too movement. People really dragged Mike Pence for saying he wouldn't go to dinner with a woman, but I'm like, that makes all the sense in the world in today's climate. And I tell my fiance the same thing. He works in a corporate environment, and I'm like, don't be alone in a room.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a business dinner? Okay, are there a few men coming to you, other women? Like, it has to be a group.
Yeah.
It can't be even you and like two other people, one on this email. You just can't do it. Because you just have to, that's the unfortunate ramification.
Yeah. It's interesting, you know, you talk about good intentions. I've always thought it was good intentions, Blair. And I'm starting to think maybe it isn't so much good intentions, it's incompetence, it's lack of knowledge, it's lack of foresight.
Yeah.
And it's feelings based.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want bad men taking advantage of women. And it's like, that's kind of this, you know, this uproar, this surge of hate that we see, you know, when they're storming this, you know, Supreme Court of the United States and Kavanaugh and this and that. And it's just this anger, this seething anger. It all comes from a place of emotion, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, I was actually just talking with my friend about this the other day. I was saying, like, a lot of people's concept of politics is literally just good guy versus bad guy.
Yeah.
And Republican means bad guy.
And we're pitted against each other. The media is doing that.
Yeah, and that's the fault of the media.
Yeah.
And the fault of a lack of education. You can go on and on, but it's just sad that a lot of people, like, we're in LA filming this, so everyone doesn't know, and I was pulling out of my apartment building, and one of my neighbors I saw had a Fidel Castro huge sticker, like, on the back of his Hummer, the back tire, like, just huge.
On a Hummer?
Yeah, on a Hummer.
Fidel Castro.
You might as well have like an iPhone case of Fidel Castro. But regardless, I was like, it's so crazy how this guy can like drive around in this Hummer with this Fidel Castro sticker, and like he probably gets no backlash at all here. But I guarantee you,
nobody sees the irony.
Right. I guarantee you, if he had Trump there instead, his tires would be slashed. People would be throwing things. Yeah. You can't. And and I'm going through wearing a MAGA hat in Hollywood, and
Do you wear the hat now?
No, I did for one video. I got assaulted twice on camera, and I was like, you know what? I'll stick to my
It's not worth it, is it?
I was like, I'll stick to my online activism. I can make more change alive and without a black eye than with. So yeah. But that goes back to like just good guy versus bad guy. Republican means bad guy in these people's minds, no matter what. No matter what.
Yeah.
I almost think like sometimes if I called myself a Democrat but I had all the same opinions, would people still hate me as much? Probably not, because people's conception is just like good guy versus bad guy. And it's so crazy because I was thinking like, wait, am I allowed to feel a certain type of way about him in my apartment building with the Fidel Castro thing? Like, that to me, one of the first things to think about is like the murder of gays and like the LGBT community being oppressed. That's what communism does. But like, no one else thinks like that for some reason. They think like Trump's doing that, when Trump is the one who has launched the global efforts to decriminalize homosexuality across the world. When Trump is the one who's made historic strides in HIV medication access. Like, people are just so backwards. It's so crazy.
Yeah. You like his chances in November?
I do like his chances. I feel like the only thing that could ruin it is if Republicans get a little too comfortable and think that the loonies on the left just have no chance.
Yeah.
They do have a chance. Let's be real. You have to get out there and vote. I'm voting Trump 2020.
Who on the left is his biggest threat, do you think?
I think complacency is the biggest threat. I don't think a person.
Okay, so from the candidates, you've got Warren, you've got Sanders,
Biden with his teeth falling out. You have Bernie just had 2 heart attacks. You have like Elizabeth Warren who like lied about being Indian. Like, it's just. They're all jokes. They're all like caricatures of what Democrats are, which is so crazy. And it's crazy how the whole thing was about like diversity and minorities and it's like they're all white up there. It's all the same stuff. So complacency, I think, would be the biggest threat to Trump winning again. So I'm hoping, I don't even live in a swing state. My vote doesn't even count. I live in California, but I'm hoping that people.
Well, congressional districts count.
Yeah, I'm hoping people, like I said, just don't get complacent.
Yeah, I agree with you. I want to talk to you about language real quick, because you and I are both fans. We've had Jordan Peterson on our show. And the whole thing that happened a few years ago, Canada wanted to implement this law that you could it was illegal to call somebody a pronoun that they didn't want to be called. And he was accused of being transphobic and this and that. He says, no, if you tell me you want to be called a she or a he, I will call you that. But
don't police it legally.
Yeah. What is your feeling on all of this? And we're seeing this now in England. I mean, you talked about England earlier. England, I mean, they threw Tommy Robinson in jail for saying something that was politically incorrect. It's ruined his life.
They don't even have free speech.
Right. I'm originally from London, England. It's really scary to see what's happening over there. We just had Katie Hopkins out here last week talking about this. But talk to me a little bit. Oh, she's amazing. She's amazing. Talk to me a little bit about your perspective on language today, and really, from a trans perspective, and again from a common sense trans perspective, should the government be involved in any of that?
Absolutely not. We just brushed on how the UK does not have freedom of speech. People cannot take that for granted here. It is so important. And anyone who stands to police speech, I know the Jordan Peterson thing was in Canada, but it happens here too.
Yeah.
Anyone who is standing for policing speech or saying that you must use this word specifically or face consequences is my enemy. I don't care how much you call yourself a trans ally. If you're trying to police speech, you're my enemy, because I care way more about freedom of speech than I do that. And the whole thing about pronouns is that, again, these are people fighting for things we didn't even want. Pronouns are utilitarian. You don't use a pronoun based on what someone wants, or on the other side, on the right, you don't use it based on chromosomes. You use it based on secondary sex characteristics, i.e. what someone looks like. If someone's in front of you, what makes the most sense to say? And when it comes to trans people who actually transition, it wouldn't make sense to use their original sex pronoun because they don't look like that. And it would be difficult to even use the original. Like, I've never gotten called he no matter where I go. It doesn't happen because it would be a stretch and harder for someone to use that. You know what I mean? Like, even a lot of I had an actually discussion with Ben Shapiro on my channel like 2 years ago.
Yeah, you had a debate. It was good.
And this is what I was arguing, was that actually no, the left and the right gets it wrong. They're utilitarian. If you have to think about it, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's just what it is, and I have been around a lot of the sort of conservative commentators who will tweet things like, I will only ever call a trans woman he. They don't call me he in person. There's not a single one of them. So I don't like being forced to suspend my knowledge of how the real world works to have these conversations, what I've always said. Pronouns are utilitarian. They're not what someone prefers. They're not someone's chromosomes. They're just what makes sense. So policing speech and trying to fine people for using the wrong one is sick.
All right. We'll wrap it up here in a couple of moments. What's next for Blair White?
Oh my God. Okay. So 2020 is going to be, I just have good feelings about 2020. I'm writing a book. That's been a while coming, and people.
Biography? Or?
It's going to be, I don't want to give too much away, it's going to be everything that anyone who's ever watched me either loyally, faithfully, or casually would want from a book out of me. So I'm giving you what you want. And just a ton more videos. I'm working on a ton of different projects. I'm working on more TV than ever before. I'm going to do a tour in the summer, which is my own tour, which is great because I've done speaking events for other people, and I get frustrated that they're not run exactly how I want them to run, and I want to do something for just my supporters. So a tour, a book, and who knows what else. I'm getting married too in 2020. That's going to happen.
Yeah, congratulations on that. He's a super, super nice guy.
Yeah, he is.
You and your mom, you guys talk a lot? You still close?
Yeah. We, sometimes it gets hard with sort of the lifestyle that I live to keep in contact with like family and stuff, and I find myself slipping, which is not good.
Call your mom.
Yeah. Everyone call your mom. They're going to call
Everybody call your mom.
Everyone call your mom.
Like I said, I'm sure your dad's looking down at you and is proud.
Thank you.
Seriously.
Thanks.
I lost my dad 10 years ago, and I understand the pain, and couldn't imagine much younger. So, yeah, I mean, you've got to feel that.
Yeah.
You're doing good things.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to seeing good things. Tell everybody where they can find you, where to follow you, and all of their...
Yeah, just search Blair White. I'm on everything. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Luckily, I'm like the only Blair White, so I will come up first. There used to be a pro skateboarder named Blair White, but I totally beat him in the Google algorithm, so he doesn't pop up anymore. So you'll find me. And other than that, yeah, just weekly videos, and you'll find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Blair.
Thank you.
All right, folks. And we'll be back again real soon here over at Whiskey Politics. Thanks to Blair White. And check out the studio. We've got some big things happening coming down the road here. Cheers. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.